Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from ArtPlace.ca. I apologize for the fan blowing in the background. Again, another scorcher outside. So all the air conditioners are going and fans blowing at the door of my studio. Mia's sleeping downstairs, so I thought I'm going to create another journal page. So in the last video that I did, I created this this page, and it's part of the Dark Side of Vintage project, and the sub-theme for this was called The Raven. And this is a quote from Edgar Allan Poe, and the numbers are symbolic to ravens. And I did this with a flip, so this page will actually be on the left side of my expanding journal. So now I'm going to create on this side, and in that video I demonstrated some gelatin printing here. So I'm going to be putting something on this side here which can be used for this piece or can be used for this piece. Okay, and basically it's got to be regarding Edgar Allan Poe. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to do a abstract piece of Edgar Allan Poe, but in the background, like what I did here is I took this through Photoshop, and I broke the pieces down. First I converted it to monochrome and then broke the pieces down into just a few shades. And this is just to show you what I'm looking at, I guess more for a composition. Now this photograph is a very popular one. You can search on the internet and it'll come up along with his history and stuff. But what I want to do with this is I want to actually paint a raven in the background, because his I know him from the Raven poems. That's how I know him. And I thought, well, I'm going to put a raven in the background. But I'm not going to be creating it with these purples. I'm going to be creating it more along the blood red tones. Okay? So, for the actual page, I'm going to be using my existing journal page. But how I created this, if you haven't seen the other video, I created this with the Strathmore Wind Power mixed media paper. It's the 400 series, 11 by 14. And I took a sheet, I measured it, and I folded it to get this tab. Okay? So I'm using the back side of this page. Because it is for the Dark Side of Vintage project, might as well keep everything together. On top of that, it's all this back and this front will be for Edgar Allan Poe, so we'll leave it at that. All the supplies that I actually end up using will be listed at the end of the video, but for now what I'll do is I'll show you some supplies that I'm pondering that I'm going to be using. And if you followed me, you know that I pull stuff in, I take stuff out, and I let the page, actually I let the artwork guide me as to what I'm going to do. Because everything that I teach, unless I specifically say it has to be done on this surface, you can create this as a standalone art piece. It does not have to do with journaling. Okay? The paints I'm going to be using today will be the DecoArt Traditions acrylics. These are the professional acrylics. And the colors that I'm envisioning that I'm going to be using is quinacridone burnt orange, permanent alizarin crimson, dioxazine purple, carbon black, titanium white, and I'm going to be using some extender and blending medium. And then when I finish off the page, I'll be sealing it with the satin varnish. The varnish we don't need right now. Put that aside. The typical supplies of masking tape, misting bottle, paper towels. I've got my brush basin on the side here with water. Sketchbook, I'll show you that in a second. My Prismacolor graphite pencil. Now this is a 2B pencil. I don't want to use anything too hard, otherwise it'll put gouges in here. And you don't want to use anything too soft because it'll actually muddy up the paint, but the 2B is actually pretty good. Palette knife and kneadable eraser. Now I got an email yesterday as to why I used a palette knife in a lot of my pieces. I use a palette knife anytime, more of a plastic palette knife that's curved when I'm working on a paper-based surface. Otherwise, I'll use metal. Because the palette knife I was using was actually putting holes, because if I didn't quite get it down right, the tip of it, which was pointed, was actually cutting into the paper. So the plastic one is okay, which is rounded. I'm just too lazy to go out to the store to buy a rounded metal palette knife. That's the only reason why. I'm just too lazy to do so. And let's see, what else have we got? But this is fine. There's no reason why you have to go out and spend $5 for a palette knife when one that's worth about $1 will do the same thing. It's just to mix paint. And then the stencils. I have my letter stencils cut out in a little bag. And, oh, it would help if I told you what they were. Medium letters. Okay, this is the 3-inch simple script alphabet from Deco Art. And the letters that I pulled out was P-O-E. And then I have the broken at berry borders, and I'm going to be using this here, like so. Oh, there's a glare. There's a glare. Okay, so I'm going to be using there. That stencil there. Okay. And then the letters P-O-E. Okay. That way it can apply to this side or the other side. Brushes. I'm going to be using my Majestic brushes today with the black handles. Anytime I'm painting people, I always go to my Filberts and rounds. So I don't look at numbers on brushes. I look at this. Okay, I don't care what these are, but at the end of the when I list the supplies, I will actually put the numbers of the brushes I use. So I've got a massive one, some small ones. I've got a microscopic little round brush. It's a 20 0 for details. Okay, so let's see, a 1-inch, a number 12, a number 8, a number 10, 6, 4, and then the rounds, number 2 and a 20-0. Like I said, I don't care for numbers. I look at the size of the brush because you should be using the biggest brush possible for the area that you're painting. Otherwise, you spend way too much time on details. And, oh, and this here is a Ranger non-stick craft mat. One of the best purchases I've ever made. It is a bit pricey up front to buy, but it's already paid for itself a ton of times over. It protects the table. I use this as my palette. Paint doesn't stick to it. You just wipe it clean. The only bad thing about it is that it's so thin and it does curl. I have taped it down a bit, but it's not big enough, so I'm going to buy another one, and maybe I'll put some packing tape in the middle just to make it a much larger piece. And I have a container here of kitchen wipes. Now in my journal, this is my journal. I was using this to teach a class, and so I did a really rough sketch of a raven. Now this is from my memory, picturing a bird. It could be any bird. It doesn't have to be a raven. It could be any bird, and the raven, you just make a longer head and a longer beak. But I was envisioning watching seagulls outside, and they were flying up, and I was like, oh, okay. So I tried to capture that image in my mind, and I quickly did a rough sketch. It's awful, but it's the general shape that I'm looking at. So he's flying, and he's facing more this way, so you're seeing the bottom of his wing here, and this is just the edge. So his body is right here. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at, is to paint in the background. Put that aside. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to actually prep the page. Now I am going to be covering this. If you like the background that you created, then just work with that. But the idea is that for the actual artwork, now I can have him just here and then do something in here, but what I'm thinking about doing is I know what's going to happen. I end up tearing this off because flaps, it's just a fad for me, the flaps, because I like the idea of being the whole piece showing. That's up to you. That's up to you. But I'm going to show you how this is going to work. So ideally, that's going to be there. The raven in the background, and I'll more than likely put a poem here. Okay, and then flipped it over, then P-O-E here. Okay, and that way either he gets covered up or this gets covered up. I do not want to cover this because the words are here. Okay, so let's get started with the background. And I'm going to get my water. First thing we're going to do, titanium white. I love doing these types of background. Oh yeah, I shake the bottles like this, okay, then bang them on the table, but then Mia will start to bark. or tap them, it gets the paint back down into the bottle so it doesn't spurt out here. I had that happened. That happened to me yesterday. It drove me insane. Carbon black. Now these big bottles, what I do have on the sides, I have them in small bottles, and I just write the number down and the actual pigment. And this is specifically for writing out the instruction sheets. See? It just spewed. I wasn't paying attention. It just spewed all over my LCD TV in the front. Shh, we won't tell Joe. I don't need alizarin crimson yet. And a little bit of quinacridone burnt orange. That's a disgusting sound. And in the black, carbon black, to that, roughly about 1/8 of dioxazine purple. And this is where you'll use your palette knife to mix that up. Dioxazine purple is mega powerful. It's like purple on steroids. So be careful how much purple you put in anything. The dioxazine purple. Be careful how much of it you put in anything. I wanted to slightly tint the black. I rarely use tube black in my actual fine art pieces because black tends to be too muddy looking, too flat. Alright, I apologize for that. The Purelator came to the door with my ink cartridge delivery. Did you? Oh my god. Good guard dog she is. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the extender blending medium and it's going to put a little bit in there. I haven't put alizarin crimson out yet because I don't need it yet. And I'm putting this out into the paint because it will help the paint stay open a little bit longer. Because it's so hot here, and because of the air conditioners are going and the fans going, that air movement is what dries out the acrylic paint. Okay. And if I contaminate the white, I'm not too worried about it. Not for this. Because we are going to make a gray. Now the good thing about this piece is that if you are not a portrait artist, that's fine. I should have made this, put this a little bit over. So I'm going to get my big monstrous filbert brush, dipped it in water first. Okay. And I'm going to start with white, and I'm thinking just going to get that going. Now what I should have done is I should have probably primed this with some gesso. Gesso is more economical than paint. And it's also is more like a sealer. And these background pieces here, I'm not going to worry if I don't cover it all because it'll just add some visual texture. Visual texture is what it looks like texture. Physical texture is the actual texture in the page. Got a little bit of black in there, doesn't matter. Okay. Now the one thing I don't want to do is get this onto the back side of my page. Alright, so I just wipe that down now. And now I'm going to do the same thing here. Just getting this going here. I'm not too worried about this part here because the poem is going to be written here. And I'll probably just put that, I'll just write that down, like either handwrite it or stencil it. Now I'm going to take a heat gun and I'm just going to get started on this. Oh, Mia came to visit. Oh, with the heat gun on. Hello, Mia. So with this here heat gun is hot air. It's not so much the air pressure, it's the heat. So I'm keeping it high up as long as my hand can stay there comfortably, I'm fine. If it gets too hot on my hands, I have to lift it up a little bit. Okay? We're not embossing. Embossing is when you have it right up close like this, and it's for a few seconds. When you're drying acrylics, look at that. I got that in there. That's okay. When you're drying acrylics, you have to really watch the temperature. Especially if you're working on terra skin, because it's not made from paper, it's made from stone. It will actually bend and you won't get it back. Now on this one here, there's a lot of collage work on the back, which is fine. But if you had stickers and stuff like that on your journal page, then you would have to be very careful on the heat because your stickers might peel. Here we go. Now I know a lot of this stuff I end up repeating. I would rather get all the information in there for beginners, because if you're experienced, you can fast forward through the lesson. Actually, it's not even a lesson, it's just me. I'm just putting the camera on to show you how I create my page. I'm not going to do a 30-minute journal page. This video will likely be probably about an hour and a half. So you can fast forward if you want. Alrighty. Yeah, this isn't working for me. I wasn't paying attention. That's good to go. And that's good to go. So let's start with this one first. Then this one I want to dry first because it is so close to this one. I'm just wetting the paper first. I'll take a little bit of white. And this is what's going to have the stencil on it, but I still want to get a background. And then I'm going to take a little bit of black. And very carefully go to the edge. Get good deep black in there. Okay, then I'm going to rinse my brush. Paper towel, paper towel, paper towel. Clean paper towel. I'm just letting the paint tack up a little bit. Now because I have the decoupage on this piece, it actually comes clean really, really easy. There we go. I'm going to go to a smaller brush. Do I have to go to... No, I don't have to go to a smaller brush. I'm just going to clean this one. The big massive filbert brushes, they hold a lot of water. And I'm going to use crisscross strokes. This is drying already. Crisscross strokes. Keep it rough. I don't want this to be flat looking. I want this to be rough. Okay, and get a little bit more black on the edge, almost like a vignette. And I already just realized that I forgot to bring out my workhorse brush that's going to do all this next step. It's amazing. I learned how to do the hypnotizing an area from Buck Paulson when I was going through my Alexander certification, but the one that really instilled it with the different things you can do with it was my mentor Buck Paulson. My other daddy, my other father figure. Amazing man. Love him, love him, love him. Okay, so that just sounded wrong, my other daddy. Oh, I didn't mean it to sound like that, but mop brush, this is already dried. This may take another couple of layers, and you just tickle the surface. When he was doing this, he was using what he called his bunny brush. It's just a goat hair brush, and it just softens everything up. Now if it's dry, oh, I actually kind of like that. I'm going to get a smaller brush. I just got my pencil. I am so uncoordinated today. Holy moly. Joe was saying that this morning, how he was wondering if I was going to misplace my brain or something. And I'm just going to get that in there. Everything's dried. I may have to add a little bit more blender and extender, blending medium. And pick up some more white. This you can do as many times as you want because it'll always be different. Okay. This is, oh my god, this is dried already. Holy moly. Let me get a different brush. And I'm not going to edit out the mistakes. I'm going to put some blending medium right on the page. Right on the page. I'm going to put that blending medium right in the paint. And I get some black, which is now loaded in the brush. I've got this monster fan at the door, and everything must be drying so fast. There we go. And just going to pad that brush. But see how it just... Now, this has to be done dry. Now I just got myself another brush, which is a fluffier brush. This has to be dry. Oh, you know what? This was I think a new brush because I could see a few of the hairs coming out. The hairs come out. That's easy. You just take a little palette knife and you just kind of scoop them up. But if the brush picks up an awful lot of paint, then you need to get another mop brush, or wait for this to dry and then do another layer. Now, as I'm doing this, if this paint is wet, I'll be probably be scooping it back in. Okay, so you got to be careful with that as well. But I'm going to be stenciling over this, so I'm not too worried. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Just to get something in there. Now, I will now get my pointy palette knife. Oh, in water. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, probably about a dozen mop brushes. And they're specifically for this purpose. And it's all about the process with this. That's fine. Just get another one. Whoops. There we go. There we are. Okay. I'm going to get my heat gun. Try that. Now this, you can use a heat gun on this mat, which is pretty good. And I'm just looking, so I've done this for so long, I can see when this actually dries. It goes, I'm turning on an angle and I can see when the paint is dry. This doesn't take long. And I'm just going to get now paper towel. And I go right over the painting, just to remove any wet paint. Now, some of this paint did come on here, and it's fine because it's really grungy looking. All right, there we go. So that now will have the stencil that's on here, but if it turns this way, it actually works fine with this theme. Oh, could you hear her? I could hear her moaning. So now to clean this, just a little bit of water. I don't clean this as often as I should. And I usually do this when I'm doing art on my own. I don't use the heat gun an awful lot because I let the piece dry, and while it's drying, I clean up. I'm trying very hard. One of my resolutions was to try very hard to try to keep my work area clean. Especially now that we have Mia. We've had her for about 2 months, and she's already, most of the stuff that she's grabbing that she shouldn't is in the studio. But she hasn't done that for a while, so she's pretty good. All right. So that's pretty cool, which means it's not 100% dry yet. Okay? But I can start working. So I'm going to do now this technique here. I'm going to do the same thing here now. But all my mop brushes are, they're all wet. Okay? The actual filbert brushes are fine, but the mop brushes have to be dry. So if you only have one mop brush, all you do is wash it. Okay? I use the Winning Colors, which is now named as 1000 Plus Stain Remover. Wet the brush, 1 drop, clean it, rinse it, and then because it has to be used dry to do this technique, just blow dry it on a low setting. Don't use a hot setting because you'll melt the glue that's inside the ferrule holding the bristles together. Okay? But it has to be dry. Now the other brushes that you can use are hake brushes, which are this shape. You can do that as well with this. Okay? As long as it's goat hair. That's all that matters. As long as it's goat hair. Okay? I'm going to put that back in water. So my mop brushes are going to go in water. I don't let them sit in there very long. No more than 5 minutes. So I'm going to get this piece done, and then by that time everything will be dry. Now I already know that this is going to take a little bit longer to dry, so, or it's going to dry faster. So some extender and blending medium, and I'm just going to distribute that around. Instead of putting it in the paint. It's already in the paint, but I need it to be open even longer. Now I do have the Traditions paints in a formula, like they work like oils. That would take too long to dry. These are going to be independent pieces, so I'll do the same thing here. It'll be white in the middle, then black on the outside. I'm going to get a different brush for the black. And see how it's wet and it's kind of spewing out? I love that look. It's looking for moisture. See here, it's not spewing out as much. It's not searching. But when it's really wet, you get that beautiful effect. Okay, I'll do the same thing here. Now hopefully I won't get off camera too much. Now if you've got a piece of art underneath that's not protected with a varnish or anything, you might want to put some masking tape on the border. Like tape a piece of wax paper, then use masking tape and to protect it. There we go. So his face is going to be here. That's pretty good. Let's get this one here. This piece here, I don't know if I'm going to stencil the poem or just collage it. So I'm not going to worry too much there. But see how rough I am with this? Now let me get out a bunch of my mop brushes because this one's going to take a little bit more work to do. And I will even bring out my other ones. Okay. And let's work with the big one first. Not quite enough black in there. And what I'm doing is I'm getting it started, removing most of the excess paint. Okay, that in the water. Now I'll go to the smaller one. I don't want to move this too much because I don't want to, this paint here, I don't want to get it underneath. If it happens, it happens. I'm not worried about it. So this is staying wet for a nice long time. It gives me much more time to work. This technique is amazing when you do it in oils. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful in oils. Okay. And you get the real control with these ones. Remember, dry. And mop brushes are not expensive. You can get like really expensive ones, but goat hair is goat hair. It's how well they feel. Like I hold these way back here. The soft grips are meant to be held like this, but I find I press too hard. If I hold them close to the edge, I find that I can get a little bit more action in there. I'll just blot it now and come back. I'm just going in circles because I don't want to get the same pattern. And I'll come here and just work this one a little bit. And this one here, you do have to work fairly quickly because it has to be done wet on wet. So I am not going to, so I physically can't skip this stage. Or I could probably fast forward it, but you'll miss some little tips that I'm going to have. Again, if you're advanced, you can fast forward through this, but I would prefer a beginner being shown everything. That way they're not left going, okay, the page is done, but how did she get there? Some parts I will actually speed up, put background music and speed it up because it's the same repetitive thing. This you can't speed up because you have to see how the blending is taking place. I just apologize for Miss Mia. See? Now this one here is loaded pretty well, so I'm going to put that in water. Come over here, grab this one. Now this one had a line here. I wasn't paying attention. See, there's a line there. So I can come in now with my wet brush and fix that up as long as it's wet. And it wasn't quite wet enough. Let's see if I can grab some paint over here. Now, I don't know if you can see this part. Okay, see that right there? Let's see if I can get it to happen. So as I'm rubbing, see how there's those scrapes happening? That's because the paint is starting to dry, and as I'm doing that, the paint is lifting. So if that happens, leave the area alone. Either cover it up with something else once it's dry, wait for this to be dry, put some more extender on there or some more paint, just do another layer. Oh, Mia's eating her deer antler. I can hear her crunching, grinding her teeth down on it. Before, my videos last year were of Harley and Chaos, but Chaos is at the Army base in Trenton, and Harley's on Rainbow Bridge. I'm going to dip my mop brush right into some black, because I don't really need it anymore after this. See? We got the glare. That's nothing. I can't do anything about that. I can't do anything about that. Okay, get another brush. I'm going to get a smaller brush. Let's see if I can salvage this area. Just to show you different things that you can do. Now, I'm still going to be painting on this, so I'm spending a lot more time on this than is necessary. But I just want to show you how it can be done. Okay, and then we have, so that is going to look like that. All right, so I'm going to get my heat gun and I'm going to dry this, and then when we come back, we'll start, we'll do the stenciling on the other side to give it time to dry, and then we'll come in on the inside. It's been about 15 minutes now, and I've got all this set. Now you can see all these imperfections all here. We're going to be doing some dry brushing at the end, and which will settle all this in, but a lot of the water droplets and this stuff here, that's a little bit too much extender. For this, it doesn't matter, but if you're doing a fine art piece, then you'll really want to make sure that you got the extender in the paint blended quite nicely. But I really love this visual texture. It looks like there's something collaged on there, but there's not. It's completely flat. Okay, so now we're going to stencil here. Now, this is the way I should be doing it, but and this isn't quite dry, like the actual paper inside is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to be working it like this. And I'm going to get my stencils here. And I already forgot a brush that I was going to bring out, my number 8 Bristle Bright. And I'm going to go into the quinacridone orange. Tap, tap, tap. Hopefully I'm not too much in the way. You want to get just a hint of paint because we're stenciling some letters as well. And orange is a contrast to blue, but I do want it to be transparent. Not that transparent. And I'm just going to do a gentle rub. And what you're doing is you're on the paper towel, you're wiping off the excess. Let's see if I can show you this without the glare. Okay, see how it's light there? And that's what it looks like. Okay, I apologize for the glare. Yeah, there's nothing, I can't do anything about it, sorry. And my stencil moved. There we go. Now I also have the kitchen wipes on the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe some of this back. Hopefully it hasn't completely dried yet. And what I'm hoping to do is that I'll be able to roughly remove some of the areas which will make it look distressed, tattered. This takes a bit of practice to do because you have to know just the right drying time. If it's too wet and you wipe it, everything will come off. If it's too dry, nothing will come off. Okay, so I'll leave the stencil there. Get my kitchen wipe. Baby wipes are not on sale, and so I don't have any of those. And then just gentle. Come in and see if I can show you. So see this one here? See, just remove a little bit. This is really wet, so I'm just going to squeeze the excess in there. And why am I not taking the stencil off and wiping? Because I don't want this to smear everywhere. See how that's go some ways, go a different way. Oops, the stencil moved, so I did smear a little bit. So I'm going to take a paper towel, blot up any excess paint, and then I'll just lightly do a little wipe there. See how old that looks? Now, time for the other ones. So POE, everybody's got their own method of doing this. Is just the way I'm doing it. I'm going to be using the black, or the purple black. Yeah, I like that. Okay. I want to make sure that I have them aligned, because once I get started, I won't be able to really move them around. I don't want the letters too far apart, so I'm just kind of spacing them out. Same brush. Now this one I'll have to be a little bit more careful. It's overlapping the E, so I just need to make sure it doesn't slide. This is one of the reasons why when I have a brush, if it's worn out or damaged, I don't throw it out, because you can use them for this. This one has the soft grip piece missing off it. But it makes an amazing stenciling brush. I like it because it's curved. And I'm not going to get any definitive circles. Careful not to go too close to the edge. There we go. Oh, I don't know if you saw that. There we are. Now, this stuff here. Oh, let me grab. Oh, let me grab some paper. Hang on a second. Oh, I'll just grab another piece of this. You can, if it's still wet, you can also clean your stencils to get a really rough look. I'm just showing you the technique. Damp paper towel or a baby wipe. Now, I went over the edge. I'm not worried about that. This is a really rough look. Grungy, very grungy. So I'm basically cleaning the stencil over the paper, and you can just stencil something else. Now the extenders in this, so this may not work all the time depending on how fast the paint has dried, but I like to try to use as much of the paint as possible so there's no waste. I see they're relatively clean. I can come back and I can still do it again, you know, if I want to even just to make a random background. Take a dirty paper towel, come in. See? Stencil it again. Stencil it again. And these pieces, I can use them as backgrounds for something else. And this would have been paint that this would have been a stencil I would have just cleaned under running water with the stencil cleaner. This one's dried a little bit. I'm going to pick up a speck of water. There we go. This is great if you want the grungy look. Okay. And then, now this paper towel is getting pretty worn. It's a paper-based thing, paper-based fibers, so if you want something to not come apart like the little fibers are coming off, then use cheesecloth. But even with that, you get the little stringies. Be careful when you have if you use cheesecloth, if you have pets, because of the string, especially dogs, they will chew and swallow the string. Look at that. I can now for the actual when we do the corners, the edges here, the concept is taking something dark and you're going to basically do something like this. We're going to do a proper technique though, but just to show you. This is really worn. You know, I get all the scratchies and stuff like that, and that may be desirable. You can even come into a letter. Okay, keep it nice and rough. So that's basically the look we're going to get. We're going to do it with a paintbrush. We can even do it with a paper towel. Let's see how old that looks. So that's the art lesson for today. Goodbye. Yeah, so I'll use this in something else. That will not go to waste. It will, though, go into the drawer open to dry. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good now. All right. Oh, I got a little bit of black paint here. This wasn't dry. Not worried about it. So that's that. So again, it could be good for this side or this side, which is what I'm going to use. And then inside here, I'll put a poem. So these stencils we're finished with. Put these aside. Now what I want to do is I'm going to do a sketch. Lay this out basically. So I'm thinking he's probably going to be, I want him to show up if this is open, or this is closed I should say. So I'm thinking composition wise, if I put the raven this way, I'm not going to be able to get too much happening, but I could put the raven coming out the other way, but his head will be covered. So it just depends on what you want to do. Okay, but there's an awful lot of space here. I could flip the image over. His face will still be showing, and it'll be the background, and then when you open it up, you'll have the poem of the raven poem, or even excerpts, and then the raven head coming here. So, printed on cheap paper, the regular bond paper, and you can see, let's see, can we see better this way? Yeah, we can see better this way. And I'm going to show you something really cool. Never do this on this because you'll end up keeping the lines. So I'm just going to make marks. Remember, this is a abstract. And you can use any method you want to do this. This is black. There's a shadow under here. You can also do this with any photograph. The rest I can't see, which is good. This was what makes it really abstract. If you want to freehand this, that's fine, but there. Okay, then you can see that you can also put this up to a window and you can capture. I'm just looking here up to the monitor, and there's little details in here. You can, if there's stuff that's missed. So what I'm looking for is not a lot of individual details. I want the separation lines of the white to dark, and with those lines is what I'm going to do to draw those in. And then you can either freehand it on your piece, or you can use a grid method, or take a piece of graphite transfer paper. It must be graphite. If it's not graphite, if there's wax in it, when you do this, the wax will repel the paint, unless that's what you want. But wax-free graphite paper, you slip it underneath with a stylus, a pen, or another pencil. You just make some lines to start, and you use just enough pressure, make a line about 1 inch long, check to see if it's showing through. If it's showing through, you want it to be just dark enough that you can see it, then you would continue on doing this. It's like carbon paper, okay? So you're going to get your image transferred onto that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch a raven based on my sketchbook. Then I'm going to sketch the raven, but I'm going to have to do it the other way. So that I'm going to freehand, and I'm just, you know, assuming it's going to be like this. Where's his? So I'm thinking it'll be like this. So the raven will come out here, and then the wing will be out here, come down, the body. We're not going to get the tail in there. We're probably not going to get the tail in there because it has to come out to here and come out. His head, the beak, long, come down. I am going to refine this, so I want to make sure it looks like a raven. Thinking that the raven comes out here, comes out here. Oh, we might be able to get the tail. And the tail would be, these are the long tail feathers, would be something like this. Okay. But I'm going to look at my sketch that I did, and then the beak. So when it actually is closed, it'll still look like there's a bird flying behind them, but you'll open it up to actually see the full picture and then the poem. Okay, so I'm going to take the next few minutes to, it's more to sketch out the raven. I'll get only the rough outlines, because there's no point in getting the sketch of the raven then the full sketch of this done, because we want to have complete coverage of the raven, but we don't want to have any paint ridges. So I'm not going to paint up to this line here around his face, because then we're going to get a ridge of paint. Okay, so we're just going to paint the raven first. So I've got the sketch roughly, and I made it smaller because I have another idea what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to turn it upside down so I don't get this in the paint. And all I'm going to do, between using a filbert and a round brush, I'm just going to block him in. That's all I'm going to do. Using the same black, and I'm just going to block him in. That's it. Nothing else. So for this segment here, though, what I'll do, because it's just painting the raven until you have a full opaque coverage, thin, even layers is better than one thick layer. I'll just put some background music on, and that way you can just sit back and watch, especially for beginners, so they can see the process. If you're more advanced, you can skip ahead to the next section.